Thank you all for coming. My name is Alex Weiser. I am... Thank you. No, please. I was going to introduce myself, but maybe I don't have to. So I want to say a word about what is going to happen tonight, why we're here, both the topic of the evening, but also why we're here at YIVO. And so we're celebrating the release of my new album, In a Dark Blue Night. Thank you. And this album, it's really, in many ways, a celebration of New York City. It has two parts. The first part is settings of 5 Yiddish poems about New York City at night. And the second part are settings of stories of my grandmother, in her own words, that I recorded from before she passed away. And I edited her words into song texts and created this song cycle out of them, which I called Coney Island Days. And so the album is these two halves. It's the nighttime and through Yiddish modernist poetry, and then the daytime through my grandmother's childhood stories. And why YIVO? So I've been working at YIVO as the Director of Public Programs for over 8 years now, which is kind of hard for me to believe. I came here, with a background in music and after working at a music festival, as thinking that this would be, a really interesting day job. My interest was piqued, and so I came here and started running the programs. And as I got to know YIVO and all that it does, and usually when we start programs, I give a little spiel about what YIVO is, and so I'll tell you what that is right now, because this is the discovery that I had as I started working here, that YIVO is this amazing place where Jewish history comes to life. It has an incredible archive of over 24 million documents and a library with over 400,000 books, which document Jewish history and Jewish culture with a particular specialty of Yiddish. And we do public programs like performances like tonight, lectures, panel discussions, film screenings, theatrical performances, all sorts of things. And we have classes and exhibitions which bring to life the world of that culture. So I'm working here. We have a summer immersive Yiddish language program, and I'm allowed to sit in for free as a part of my job. It's amazing. So sure, I'll learn Yiddish. It'll help me do my job better too. It's like win-win. So I start learning Yiddish, and I totally fell in love with it. I totally fell in love with YIVO. And what I realized as I was learning Yiddish and discovering all of these things about Jewish history that were so much more nuanced and complex and rich than I had really ever thought, and about Yiddish literature, realizing that this is a literature which has the full breadth and depth of all of the literature that I was already interested in English and in other languages. And so here I am, a composer, and I love art song, and I love opera, and I'm writing pieces of music, setting words to music, and I'm discovering these amazing Yiddish poems. So I think, maybe I'll set some of these Yiddish poems to music. And in a project that became my debut album, And All That Is Were Purple, I set to music some of these Yiddish poems alongside some English poems and some other things. And it was like a really meaningful project for me. And that actually came out about 5 years ago, which feels like crazy that that's been so much time. And after that was such a meaningful project for me, I had this thought like, okay, I've discovered this Yiddish world of literature, and it's so exciting to me. What's really my personal connection to it? Obviously, I'm Jewish. My family is Jewish. That's the language that my ancestors spoke. And learning Yiddish, I had the great opportunity to speak with people like my grandmother, who I'd mentioned, who remembered hearing it as a child and things that their family would say. And to really feel that personal connection that I had to the language. And so I wanted to explore that personal connection. And that's what this album is about. Yiddish New York. The idea of Yiddish being spoken here where I grew up, where I've lived my entire life, by people just like my family as a kind of missing link in a way to the Yiddish land that we imagine, the Yiddish land of the Yiddish literature, the poetry that I had been previously, really excited about. And so that's what kind of drove me to do this project, to find these Yiddish poems, and then also to tell my grandmother's story, again, as a part of this kind of, link of how, me, but also many people, I think, that are in my generation are linked to this kind of, not totally lost world, but this kind of world that we're a little bit disconnected from of Yiddish. And because this journey I've taken at YIVO, and it's a journey that I take every day when I come to work, and I get to, have the amazing privilege of promoting this history and exploring this history and doing events about this history. I just couldn't think of a better place to share this album than YIVO. And being YIVO, what I wanted to do was to juxtapose my new, contemporary takes on Yiddish poetry from, new Jewish immigrants to New York, and my grandmother's stories about her childhood in this kind of bilingual Yiddish-Jewish New York, to juxtapose that with old Yiddish songs about New York from the perspective of Yiddish-speaking immigrants, who were first here on the other side of that divide between Yiddish and English. So that's what we're going to hear tonight. We're going to hear interwoven back and forth old Yiddish songs about New York and about the Jewish immigrant experience, and my new songs, both setting to music old poems and also telling my grandmother's stories. On this album, there are other songs than you're going to hear tonight. We're just going to hear a taste of it, a taste of each of these two song cycles. And if you like it, I really hope you'll get the album. They're going to be for sale in the lobby. We're also going to have these wonderful posters designed by Meredith Leich, who also did the album art for this album, which is super cool. And she did the watercolors that are the album art for And All the Days Were Purple. So I was super excited to work with her again, and I'm really glad that she could be here tonight. Yeah. And we're going to celebrate with some of the foods that come up in the music, or that are just, outside of the frames, surely being eaten by the people performing this music. Things like knishes are the big connection. My grandmother's family had a knish store. You'll hear more about it. But also black and white cookies and rugelach and babka and honey cake. The honey cake is courtesy of Russ and Daughters, for which I'm very grateful. And actually the album has liner notes by Annie Polland of the Tenement Museum in conversation with Nikki Russ Fetterman of Russ and Daughters, which is super cool. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. I could talk all night about this, but I want us to keep our eye on those knishes, and that's why we're not going to hear everything, because it's for the sake of the knishes. And also before we start, I'm just going to say I'm joined tonight by an incredible group of musicians. On the album, it's some of the same people but different people. Annie Rosen is the superstar mezzo-soprano. And she's singing on the album as well. And the album has a slightly larger complement of musicians. And we have on piano Jason Wirth. On bass, Patrick Swoboda. On violin, Lun Li. And clarinet, Yoonah Kim. So to start, now that the sun is setting, we'll start with the lullaby. And this lullaby actually has a text that was written in Eastern Europe. It was published in Odessa in 1892, written by the perhaps most famous Yiddish writer, Sholem Aleichem. He's the writer famous for the stories that became Fiddler on the Roof. And in the text of this poem, Sholem Aleichem reflects on the dream of American life. And that's why, even though it's old world, we're going to start with it tonight, because it's imagining the new world. It's a mother singing to her son about how the son's father has gone off to America, but America is going to be a paradise for the Jewish people. And so we're going to start with that. And I should add that even though the text of this was published in 1892 in Odessa, this particular musical setting was actually published in 1920 in the Lower East Side, which is an interesting, fact about this song. It was so well known that it was a folk song, actually, but many people did different musical settings for it, and it resonated not just in the old world, imagining the new world, but here in New York as well. For the next song, I wanted to give you one of my own lullabies, and this is actually the song that starts the album. It's the setting of a Morris Rosenfeld poem called Ovnt, or Evening, in which Morris Rosenfeld imagines the Hudson River saying a sweet kind of goodnight to the setting sun. It's an absolutely beautiful poem. Morris Rosenfeld is known as a kind of sweatshop poet, writing, decrying about the horrible working conditions of Jewish immigrants in the city. And we're going to hear some of that tonight too. But when I discovered this poem, I thought it was amazing that he had such breadth in his experience of New York. And I was really drawn to the way that this image of the setting sun over the Hudson felt so contemporary or eternal. It really feels like the New York that I grew up with. So, Ovnt. So now that we've settled into the night, we can hear some nice Yiddish immigrant songs about, we're going to start with about how great New York and America was. So that was Morris Rosenfeld, those words, with my music. And up next is another positive Morris Rosenfeld song that kind of bucks the trend of what he's known for, but I promise we'll get there. This is a kind of patriotic hymn that he wrote in 1917, which is when America entered World War I, which I think shaped it. This is right around the same time that Irving Berlin writes "God Bless America." And so Yiddish-speaking immigrants like Irving Berlin and like Morris Rosenfeld were grateful for the really good things that did come out of immigration to America. And of course, it wasn't all good, and we'll get to it. But when I found this song here at YIVO, I thought, well, it's a kind of Yiddish national anthem. It's very cool. So it's a nice little song. Let's take a listen. Last words there are, yo, du bist gut genug für mir. Yeah, you're good enough for me. So up next, two songs of mine reflecting on New York at night through the lens of Yiddish poetry. We're going to hear them back to back. The first is a setting of a Naftali Gross poem, which I'm calling, for the sake of the song, Like the Stars in Heaven. The actual poem was called just New York, which I think in the context of the album, it's you need more. So in this poem, Naftali Gross, he describes the skyline and all of the beautiful lights that are in it, and kind of compares them to the starry sky. And so it's amazing how he sees this kind of beautiful natural image in the man-made sky. And similarly, in the poem that I set for the following song that we're going to hear, Celia Dropkin compares the same skyline with all of the lit-up rooms from all of the buildings to a giant honeycomb glowing with honey. But the honey here is man-made. It's the light of the beautiful, majestic skyline. So we'll hear those two songs now. promised we would see a darker side of American immigrant Jewish life, and now's the time in the program for that. The next song is also by, it has a text by Morris Rosenfeld, and it's actually just a folk song. I think that he may have himself made the melody up, because Morris Rosenfeld, in addition to being himself a sweatshop worker and a poet of renown, would actually go to labor meetings and sing his own poems. And so we don't know who wrote the melody for this next song, but I have a sneaking suspicion that maybe he himself made it up, but probably didn't write it down because I don't think he was musically literate. But it was so popular that it became a kind of anthem for people who had this experience. And the song is called Mein Jingele. It's My Little Boy. And in the song, the narrator is a father, and he is lamenting his situation, which is that he has to work such long days in his sweatshop work to make ends meet, that he has to leave in the morning before his son wakes up. And he comes back in the evening once his son is already sleeping. So it's this beautiful, heartbreaking story about that experience and about this, darker side where America was, the land of the Golden Land and land of promise and opportunity for Jewish immigrants, but it was also a really difficult place to make a go of it. The next song is a setting from my album of a poem by Anna Margolin about the evening on Broadway. But sticking with the theme of this section, it's not the exciting fun of Broadway that Anna Margolin talks about in this poem, but it's a sense of loneliness that she feels seeing this kind of commotion and the advertisements and all of the people rustling about but kind of missing each other in the process. And so this too is a part of this experience, this kind of alienation of the city.
Oh
And now we move back to Morris Rosenfeld for another one of his hit sweatshop ballads. This one is called Mein Ruheplatz, My Resting Place, and it describes the experience of telling your beloved, don't look for me at the myrtle trees. You'll find me chained to the sweatshop machines, and that's my resting place. And this is a setting by the wonderful operatic Yiddish singer Sidor Belarsky. So one of the things that's really interesting to me about all of the song texts that we've just heard is that they're contemporaneous reflections on the experience that they're talking about. You know, when Morris Rosenfeld writes about the sweatshop experience, he's living it at the same time. And when he writes about, you know, the sunset over the Hudson, like that's because that's his experience right then and there. And the songs that we have from the past are, and the poetry as well, it's an incredible window into how people were thinking at the moment that they wrote it. You know, and we see the good and the bad and everything in between. But now as we shift towards this last section of the concert, as I told you, we've got to keep the knishes in our view here. we're going to start thinking about things in retrospect. And the next song is the last old song that we'll hear, and then we'll finish with a few more of my new ones. And it's a song from 1943 called Ich denk nach der Ist Sayd von Amol. I long for the East Side of yesteryear. And it's from a Yiddish theater production called The Golden Land, and it's reflecting on a time period in which this kind of golden age of Yiddish-speaking Jewry coming to the Lower East Side and all connecting there from all around the Eastern European world is now kind of a nostalgic thing of the past. You know, most of the people that lived in the Lower East Side have moved on to Brooklyn or somewhere else. And all the drudgery of sweatshop life and all of the things that we just heard some songs about are now washed away into nostalgia for this time where everyone was a new immigrant, speaking Yiddish with each other, and enjoying that experience. So let's listen. And this song is by Alexander Olshanetsky and Jacob Jacobs. So next up is the final musical segment. But as I mentioned before, there's the food segment afterwards, and I hope you'll stick around. And not just enjoy the food, but also check out the album. We're only hearing about half of the album tonight, so I hope you'll check it out to hear the rest. We also have these wonderful posters with some of the postcards that adorn the album art, which are yours for free if you buy an album. I'm happy to sign it too. And we also have posters and albums of In All the Days Were Purple for sale tonight too. So get a knish, get an album. This last set, we're going to hear 3 of the songs, the opening 3 songs of Coney Island Days. This is the song cycle I mentioned earlier, where it's my grandmother's own words that form the text of the songs. And my grandmother and I were very close. And when she was sick at the end of her life, I knew that she was going to pass away. I recorded her telling some of her stories about her childhood. As I was reflecting on this question that I asked earlier of, what's my kind of connection to this Yiddish world? And she was one of the conduits of that connection and her experience. And she had an incredible childhood, at least as she would explain it. Her family had a knish store in Coney Island, where during the summer they would live in a single room behind the knish store. And she was the youngest of 3. Her older brother, Morty, and her older sister, B, she absolutely loved and adored. But because she was young, she kind of was able to have free reign. And so she tells these stories. I guess I shouldn't give away too much. But just want to say a few quick things, which is that a lot of people who are related to my grandmother are here. Thank you for coming. In particular, Marlene, her cousin, who is mentioned in the first song. So see if you can pick that up. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. Lots more to say, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to everyone that made this album possible, to all of the amazing performers, to Cantaloupe Music, Bill Murphy and Michael Gordon, and everyone at Cantaloupe. And thank you to all you for joining tonight.
We used to go to the beach or sand.
Just one final comment. In the family lore, this is absolutely not true, but the joke is that Yoonah Shimmel's Knishes drove them out of business. So we got Yoonah Shimmel's Knishes tonight. So thank you all so much for coming. I hope you'll check out the rest of the album and enjoy the food.